I used to pray for times like this, to rhyme like this, so I had to grind like that, to shine like this. In a matter of time I spent on some locked up shit in the back of the paddy wagon, cuffs locked on wrist. See my dreams unfold, nightmares come true. It was time to marry the game, and I said, yeah, I do. If you want it, you gotta see it with a clear eye view. Got shorty, she tryna bless me like I said I chew. Like a nigga sneeze, nigga please for them trick and squeeze. I'm getting cream, never let them hoes get in between of what we started.
Hello.
Little nigga, but I'm lying hearted. They love me when I was stuck in their head, and when I departed, I go and get it regardless. Draw it like I'm an artist.
Gonna let this rock out a little bit.
Walking with foreigns in my garages are foreign bitches menaging, fucking sucking and swallowing anything for $1. They tell me get him, I got him, got him. I did it without an album.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back, new listeners. Welcome back, old listeners. Welcome back if you listened just last week. What up? What up, B?
Hey, what up? What's going on?
How's everybody doing? Hopefully everyone's doing great. I feel like I'm not up right now. I'm not a B right now, so I'm a little... Welcome back to another episode of Set Connects. This is Cannabis Entrepreneurial Dialogues. This is your host, Danny. I'm here with B.
Yeah. What's going on with you, Danny?
Nothing, man. I'm good. Got a busy day today. I'm going to start off by saying, again, welcome back, listeners, to another episode. We hope you've been enjoying these last few episodes, last few weeks. We have a special one today that I'm excited to get into. But before we do that, again, we want to just remind everyone to subscribe to YouTube, Said Connects. Go ahead and follow us on Instagram at CED_connects. We've been shadow banned. It's been for sure. So make sure to put in the entire word to follow us on Instagram. But worst case scenario, for at least subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't done so already.
Yeah. Definitely share us.
Yep, share all our content, share all of the episodes if you can. We really appreciate that. We got a lot of updates coming up. We're gonna be a part of Flower Fest. That's now being moved to September. So if you're in California, Flower Festival in Port Hueneme, September 10th and 11th. We're gonna be there. So I'm excited about that and helping with Flower Fest. So shout out to Flower Fest and all their team. What else do I got? I'm gonna shout out my girls now before I forget. Hi Dalia. Hi Rosemary. What's up, Faith? I'm rocking the Faith's hat today.
Yeah, that's what I was about to ask you. We got big news.
Yeah, so I'm rocking Faith's hat. She's made All Stars and their first tournament, they made it all the way to the championship. So we're gonna go check them out today. So shout out to CV. Centinela Valley's softball. What else do I got? You got any announcements you got to make, B?
No, I mean, we always shout out our babies, and this week we had one of the babies definitely culminate from elementary, so I wanted to shout her out.
Nice.
I was looking at her yesterday. I was like, damn, all
elementary
grown
is
up.
going to middle school now.
Going to middle school.
Oh, get ready.
Yeah.
Get ready.
I mean, she's already a handful, so
it's gonna be worse. I'm telling you.
But much love to that baby. Love you, Hannah.
Yeah. What else do I got? There's something else too. What's up with Adora? What's up with what does Adora got going on?
We got movie night coming up. Family night, definitely. I know that's coming up. I don't think that we've released the dates yet. We will soon. But I know that
do you know what movie you're gonna play?
It's up to
24th, you said? The 24th of June? All right. Well, you heard it here first. 24th of June, Adore's hosting a movie night. We don't know the movie just yet.
Yeah.
Maybe Blood Out. I don't know. I'm just kidding.
No, it gotta be little one friendly.
It's family friendly.
It's definitely a family night. We want to focus on those little ones.
All right. There's gonna be food.
Yeah.
What else we got?
I think we got some.
You don't have to be quiet. You can just say it out loud.
Oh, we got dinner church on the 12th.
Dinner church on the 12th.
Yeah, for those who don't know what dinner church is really. You got
bringing it back.
You got excited. Look at you. If Danny gets excited about anything from Adora,
it's food.
It's food. it's dinner church.
It doesn't even have to be a door, just food.
Yeah, well, that's true. So we just gather at a table, share some scripture, and then just sit down together as family.
Yeah.
So that's
eh,
dope. That's exciting to come back. I mean, we've been in, taking care of each other, taking care of like first ourselves, taking a little pause between everything that's been going on. And so I think we're ready to
oh,
physically come back.
food. And for those listeners that, again, if it's your first time, I've shared this before about how we've been connected with Adore, and um
That's right.
I'm not the religious person. I've never
Same
really
here.
been the religious type. I literally only go for the food. So if you're not the religious type and you're kind of like on the fence, like there is no like it doesn't feel like your typical or stereotypical like churchy vibey thing. Like it ain't nothing like that
Yeah,
shit at all.
to me it's community. Like
It,
you get to know,
right.
you get to meet some dope people, some people that are definitely doing something in our community, and just in general, some family vibe.
Hell yeah. And you get to eat.
Again, you get to eat. So we're excited about that. And Dora, as some of our old listeners know, it's been one of our first sponsors. So shout out to Adora Lay.
Oh yeah. Cool. All right. Well, let's get into this episode. Um, we have someone that I've met through Adore. I don't know if
For
it's been the
sure.
same for you, B,
Yeah,
but
that family, that
that
community.
community, and as B just touched on, you get to meet people that are doing amazing things within the community. And that's one of the smallest things that we have about our guests that within the community.
Oh yeah, yeah, they're definitely rocking it out right now. So we're gonna talk and touch on that today.
Yeah. So without further ado, we want to introduce our guest. We know her as Z,
Yeah,
but formally Zekiah Wright.
right.
Hello, hello, hello. I'm so happy to be here. If I can make a suggestion for movie night, I'm gonna say How High. It's a great movie. It goes with the theme of the show, and I think the kids would also enjoy it.
I
It's
think
very
so. I mean,
funny.
we enjoyed it when we were kids.
Exactly.
At least I did.
I don't know if we were supposed to be watching it, but it was a great movie. So that's my vote.
We'll see. We'll see. I think the person organizing it, throw your suggestions that way.
Sounds good. Throw your suggestions, put them on the comments, leave them in our message board, and we'll make sure it'll get to the right place.
Yeah.
What up, Z? How are you?
I am doing so good. It's my first podcast, so I'm a little nervous. But
Don't be. It's just us.
yeah, yeah,
It's
that's what
just
I'm
us.
thinking.
We're
That's what
just
I'm
gonna have a
It's just us
conversation.
with a microphone.
Yeah, don't even worry about the rest.
just a microphone.
Forget the
camera.
forget the headphones.
Camera? What camera?
Well, yeah. What are you talking about? There's no cameras here.
Oh, I love it. I love it. But I am so happy to be able to chat and talk a little bit about me and what's going on. So
Yeah.
I'm happy to be here. So thank you all for inviting me onto the show.
Yeah, no, for
Yeah.
sure. And I'm excited. And that's a perfect segue is to learn more about you. Tell us more about you. Where are you from? What's your upbringing like? Have you always been here in California? And what's the relationship with cannabis?
So I definitely wish I'd always been here in California, but I am from Florida, so deep in the
Aight.
South, from a town called Winter Haven, which is best known for being near Orlando. That's our claim to fame. Super small town, very
Orlando.
yeah,
Oh,
Disney.
yeah.
Everyone's like, "Oh, so you're from Disney?" I'm like, "That's not it's not a
Nah.
place to be from, but
It's
yes, that's
The swamp, is it really swampy out there too, right?
yeah, it's pretty swampy. Alligators, all that stuff is very just normal to see.
Yeah.
So every time it makes the news, I'm like, that used to be my backyard, so it's
Mhm.
not it's not that surprising. But yeah, so grew up in Florida, went to school in Florida, law school, all of that, and visited California back in 2012 and realized that, oh no, there's a bigger, better world out there than sort of the oppressive environment of the South. And so I took the California bar and was just intent on living here, and eventually made my way here after a small stint in Washington D.C., which was amazing. But there's nothing like California. There's nothing like Southern California. And then my relationship with cannabis, I'll say it started really early. I used to be, as maybe the kids, as we used to say, probably a stoner in like high school. Like I smoked, a lot in high school, pretty much consistently through half of college. And then I had a really, really, really bad high, and then was like, "No, I'm good."
Yeah.
And what was that? Being from Florida, because I want to say you might be, I think one of the one or maybe the second. I think the second guest
Mhm.
that's not from California. Well, no, I'm lying.
No, we've had other
We've
people
had a
that are
few,
not from
but
California, but from specifically Florida.
right. So talk to me about Florida. Oh yeah, you're right. We have had Florida. No, we've had people that gone to Florida for school.
Oh, that's
But
right.
one, shout out to our Florida, all our Florida viewers and
Yeah.
listeners.
One of them being Mama Sheila.
One of them being my mom.
Shout out to
Um,
Florida.
But you mentioned you would smoke in high school in Florida. If you remember, what was that product like from Florida back in the day? Because
Ooh.
you got to think like I I don't know. I don't think there's outdoor farms out there. I wouldn't think so. I would think it's all indoor, right? And so because of the climate and because of all of that, so can you share with me that?
Yeah, I think I don't know sort of like where
Thank
it
you.
came from or how it, where it was grown. I just know that we got it. We there was I remember when Dro came out, like that was like the big thing in Florida, like Dro, you got that Dro, which was just like the more sort of intense, high. I think it all always felt the same. I wasn't like, oh, this is good or bad. It was like, cool, I got weed.
Gotcha. Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, it was
Being in
a-
high school, you're right. That makes
Yeah,
sense.
that's a lot of our mentality. Like, oh shit, we got it, we got it. The whole neighborhood, and you're
Yeah.
like, oh shit, the whole crew, oh, we got somebody got it.
Yeah, because the prices never really changed for it.
That's
So,
right.
but they were like, "Oh, it's the Dro though." So it's like, "All right, cool. Like, roll up." And and the neighborhood that I'm from, it pretty much was a neighborhood that, like, I played soccer and stuff in high school. Predominantly, everyone was white except for me. And so whenever they wanted weed, they came to my neighborhood. So that's where sort of where I grew up is the place where folks come to get weed. So, most of my friends that lived in the neighborhood, sold weed. And so it was just accessible in that way. And so I never thought about, the legality or anything like that because we were high school kids. We didn't have that, like that mentality. It was just that, we smoked. That was it.
And what about your parents or family members, knowing that it was accessible in the community that you grew up in? What was that like?
Yeah. So my brother was a very different person then. He was such a tattletale. So he would always like tell my mom, because I used to smoke in my car. And so, if I ever had to drive her somewhere or if he got in my car, he would be like, "Mom, Zekiah smoking weed." I don't think she didn't condone it, but she didn't, she wasn't like, "Don't do it." It was just like, well, that's what you're doing. You probably shouldn't be doing it. And like that was the extent of it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So 'cause you went to law school out there. What school did you go to? If you don't mind me asking.
Florida A&M, College of
All right.
Law. Woo woo. Go Rattlers.
Shout out Rattlers. All
We got a
right.
few out here. It's always surprising to see so many people that have come out to California from Florida. I get it, but it's always surprising to see.
Where exactly is that school also located in the same region of like Central Florida, Orlando area?
Yeah, it's in downtown Orlando,
Okay.
like right near the courthouse. So it's a great location for that law school. It got, it was going for a while, like 60s, 70s, closed down. And then the new spot when it reopened, probably in the 90s, was in downtown Orlando. And it's just a great law school. A lot of folks went because of the location to the courthouse, but I went certainly because of its history of service to the community and uplifting and educating, Black folks to go out into the world and be attorneys.
So with that in mind, what was going into this school? Because you mentioned now you wish you would have always been here in California, and we'll talk about that move to Florida. But when you first started the school and that process, what were your thoughts going into it, like in terms of what direction you wanted to go with law? Did you want to serve your community back home? And well, I'm sorry, what was the city again?
Winter Haven.
Winter Haven. I was gonna say New Haven.
Connecticut, shout out.
Right. It was that always the vision going into it? And tell me, like, what part of law did you study and you're going into?
Yeah, for sure. So I went to FAM, which is Florida A&M, because I used to work downtown. So right up the street from it, I used to work for the Department of Veterans Affairs, and I knew I always wanted to go to law school. I had paid so much for undergrad, so I was looking for something that also was affordable where I wouldn't be paying on a student loan forever. Shout out to the Biden administration. Let's get these loans forgiven. And so I think my first sort of experience there was realizing like how many Black folks I was surrounded by. In undergrad, I went to a predominantly white school. It's a small school, amazing education, in a very small segregated town. And so it was a lot of having to sort of battle the stereotypes of, do you play basketball? Are you on one of the sports teams? And I was like, nah, I'm just smart and trying to get an education like you, you know?
And that's crazy to hear, because when people think of Florida, they automatically think Miami. They think of South Florida, and they don't really think about like the segregation and that the ties to the South as you would if you think of like Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. And so that gets lost in translation. So to hear you say that is
it's definitely there. In my college town, it was literally one highway, really a street that sort of separated the Black side of town from the white side. And so my law school or my college was on the white side, and so that was, if folks, my interaction really with a lot of like Black people in college was the folks that worked there, and so that was always, sort of a depressing reality of it, a depressing reality of the South. And so, with that experience and then going to law school, that was the opposite. It was all Black, majority students, teachers. And I mean, we had some of the best law school teachers. They were former JAGs, former deans of other law schools that believed in the mission of the school and, worked there so that they could give us the best education. And so it was dope in that way. I had no idea what type of law I wanted to practice. I knew that I loved Law and Order. Shout out 23 seasons strong.
Oh man, what's her name? I can't think of her name right now. It wasn't Law. I think it was a Practice. I think it was called The Practice.
I think I might have watched a couple episodes, but I legit watched Law and Order to study.
But
so.
but the not the SVU, right?
No, SVU,
SVU too.
SVU.
Because there's like three different types of Law and Order, right?
Yeah,
There's
criminal
like
intent.
the criminal intent, the SVU, but then there's just regular Law and Order that shows the court case and the entire like legal.
But now
like
we know what we're
lawyers
talking
and stuff,
about.
but
Yeah,
we
but
got- we talking
back
about
in the
SVU.
day, it was
Gotcha.
Anthony Anderson was in that one. I can't remember what that one was. But I'm SVU strong.
Gotcha.
I'll say that.
All right.
And so when I got out of law school, I think my first job was working at a civil rights law firm that also represented unions. And that was a dope experience. I still had no idea. So I got a job at the U.S. Attorney's Office thinking that maybe I wanted to be a prosecutor. I realized very quickly that I did not. It was sort of that idea that people, maybe the typical idea when you think of prosecuting and it's majority folks of color. And in Washington, D.C., which is the location that I worked at, it was, males, Black men being prosecuted. And it was just a hard reality and a hard place to work. And so I was like, nah, I can't do this.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
You know what? And as crazy as it sounds, I've never really thought of that. Is there a lot of people of color in the prosecution legal side of things?
So in that office, there was all throughout. Okay. I mean, up to like department heads, new ASAs. It was a lot. And so I want to say most of the folks that were there when I worked there left as well. And I think the ones that stayed, like, big ups, because we need, people of color that are in that department to make change. I just think it takes a different type of person than me to be able to stick with it to make that change happen. So so then I just got into labor and employment law, kind of by accident, but also it just seemed interesting because I was, in my mind, I was doing the deduction of, well, what are the things that, like, what ways can I help my community? And so first off, right, thinking about prosecution, it's keeping people out of jail, right? Or really making sure they have fair, representation and fair charges against them. So it's sort of like the liberty aspect. And then I was like, well, I can't do that. So what's sort of the other thing that's like life sustaining? And it's like jobs, right? Like if we have jobs that are paying us well, then like we can uplift ourselves in our communities. And so it was looking at, well, how can I help in that way? And it's helping folks that are wrongfully terminated, that are discriminated. Sure. And so that's the lane that I've been in for the last, I guess, almost 10 years now.
Oh, dang.
Yeah. So it's very fulfilling. It's very fulfilling. I love it. So
Nice. All right. And so far in this, we've been in Florida, and then we touched on DC a bit. Share with us when did the move to California happen, and why did it happen?
so when I left the U.S. Attorney's office, I ended up working at a law firm, a mid-sized law firm, and I was the only attorney that practiced in California. I was the only barred California attorney, and so all of the California cases, I ended up working those. And I realized, I love DC; it's amazing, but ultimately want to be in California. So why am I doing California law in DC? And so I
Oh, hold on. So then you could be in any state or wherever you're working and test to be a lawyer for any other city. Like you don't necessarily have to live there
for sure.
to test for that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I never lived in Cali when I decided to take the California bar. I just knew at some point I needed to end up here. And so it was the only bar I took. So
Ah.
it sort of forced me to have to really put a plan together to get here
Mhm.
because I wouldn't really be able to practice anywhere unless I was in California. So
And this may be a dumb question, but each bar for each state, you have to like learn all of those state laws and regulations and all that shit.
precisely. Yeah. Yeah. So it was a very interesting idea at the time. People were like, "You're crazy," because at the time, California was the hardest bar to take to pass. It was the longest. It was
Yeah, that
3
was my
days.
question because I know some people that have taken it here in California and it's just not. It's brutal.
Yeah, it's no
How
joke.
so?
Well, at the time it was 3 days, and then just the standards I feel like were so high, and you had to do way more like essays, way more writing than any other states, and so it just was a beast, and it's so many. It's such a big state, and so the laws are so diverse, and you have to learn
Mm.
all of that. So not going to a California law school, when I started studying for the bar, I was basically starting from the beginning of it. Um, and people are like, "You're insane. Like, why would you do that to yourself?" And I was like, "Well, I know what I want. I got to make it happen."
Yeah.
And had to put in that work to do it and pass first time, thank God, because I don't know that I could have done it again. Meanwhile, all my Florida friends after day 2, they're like out drinking and having fun, and I'm like, "Now I got one more day to go." So it's very exhausting, but in the end, it was worth it. It worked out.
Nice.
Yeah,
Congratulations
one
on
of
that.
these-
There you go.
yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. Hey, that's wild. All right, so you took the California bar, you passed, and at this point, are you in DC or you're in Florida?
I was still in California for a while. I stayed there with a friend that I had met in Barcelona of all the places. And so we were both looking. She had just graduated too. She had taken the bar. So we were out there looking for jobs, like hustling. And I was out there for months, couldn't find anything. Applied to one job in DC and got it. And so I was like, well, I guess that's where fate's taken me for now. And so when I decided to leave DC, it was really just I'm gonna go and I'm gonna have to make it happen. I'm gonna have to make it work. Luckily, I was able to take some of the clients that I had in Washington. So I at least started with folks that I was already representing. And so I started my own firm after that. I was like, well, if I want to do it my way and I want to make sure people are represented that look like me, then I'm going to create an opportunity and a space to be able to for them to hire me. And so I started my own firm in 2017. And it was dope. It was definitely hard to live in a new place, to start a new business while I was still looking for somewhere to live. It was luckily I had a lot of energy then, I'll say that, to really hustle and be able to find it. And it worked out. It worked out. I had my own firm up until the pandemic started. And by then I was like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to eat if I keep on, having my own firm and not being able to actually physically go get new clients. So I started at a firm, and it's been cool ever since. Same type of work. And they really care about also representing, BIPOC community, representing plaintiffs and those that have been harmed by their employer in some way.
Nice. So what city do you represent, like folks in any city? Is it how does that work out?
Yeah, as long as they're in California, and they find us and want us to represent them, then we'll represent them. So I have clients as far up as like Redlands, Northern California,
yeah.
and then I think the majority are in LA because it's just beneficial to have an attorney that's near you if you ever want to
Yeah.
drop by the office.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride. I'll say that. Unexpected in all the ways and gratifying in ways that I never would have thought about.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so we definitely gone through a whole journey, and I guess I guess, getting updated. So now you're living where in LA?
So I am in West Hollywood right
Yeah.
now, which was probably the first city that I saw and was like, "Yo, I gotta live here."
Why is that?
I think it was an experience that I never experienced before, where it was just very unapologetically LGBTQ, and the freedom, just that just the environment of like the proudness in that community.
Yeah.
I didn't have that in Florida. I didn't even know places like that really existed on a day to day. Right, we had Pride and we had like the neighborhood in Tampa, but it wasn't as robust and as lively as West Hollywood. But when I moved here, I looked at that rent and it was like, nope. So it came down to how close can I live to West Hollywood without that was affordable essentially.
Yeah.
But I moved there and I absolutely love it. It's been great, and now I'm running for city council there. And it's a
yeah.
Yeah. City council.
yeah, it's I always knew I wanted to be political in some way. I didn't know what that looked like, but the fact that I couldn't live in the city, I was like, well, what else can I do when I first moved to California? What else can I do to be a part of the city? And so I went to the then mayor and said, hey, you have an opening on one of your boards that you can appoint someone. I want it to be me. We had a conversation and he was like, you got it. And so I've been on the Lesbian and Gay Advisory Board for the last, I guess, 3 years or maybe 4. Just being able to do work in the community, making sure the interest of the LGBTQ community is really considered in every aspect of decisions that are made in the city. And I was like, well, I want to do more. I want to be able to propose my own policies, right? Have the community really have an impact directly to the policymakers. And so I was like, let me be that person, since I don't see, because I want to see that our community feels represented and feels heard, and we're able to do stuff to like keep us moving forward. I don't want the city to lose its identity as like this LGBTQ safe haven, and I want to be one of the ones that helps protect that legacy. So folks that come from Wisconsin, that come from the South, that come from places where they don't have this type of like community, to be able to find it here for years to come. So
And how did, like, I guess so with this committee, um it was literally just said, like, you just happened to like have that meeting with the mayor. Did you know that that committee was already in place? Was that something that was put into place because of your efforts?
So it was already in existence. At the time, it was coming up on its like 30th year of
Oh,
being,
snaps.
of being like a board, and there happened to be an opening. I went to the city's website, looked at all the openings, and saw that one, and was like, yeah, no, that fits. I have, I'm queer. I can be on this board. I have an opinion. I think community voices should be heard. So let me be that person. So yeah.
That's-
So where? How do we get from that? So from there to the position you're in now.
Yeah. So I think it came from really talking to folks that came to our meetings, or folks that had opinions about what should and shouldn't be happening and what needs to be happening. That position sort of gave me a view and a voice in community that allowed me to hear from different people that weren't political, but that lived in the city and needed things, or that worked in the city, or that played in the city, or that owned a business, whatever the case is, right? It sort of gave me a bit of a profile to be able to be that, to be accessible, right? So folks knew that I was there, so they would have someone to talk to. And I think through those conversations, it was realizing that a lot of people, regardless of their sexual orientation or race, really just felt unheard, felt that, during the pandemic, that they needed resources for rent and had no idea where to turn. And the city had some great programs, but people didn't know about them. And so it's really realizing that there needed to be a bridge between what the city is doing and the community. So it's better communicated that, yeah, this is available. Or if it's not available, what can we do? What resources can we put behind it to make sure the needs of our community are being met and that they're able to stay in our city? It's becoming unaffordable, more affordable than like a lot of places in California. But I think there are more things that we should be doing and could be doing as a city council to make sure that we're keeping people in and that we're not excluding people because of cost, right? I was excluded from that city for some time because of cost. I couldn't afford to live there. Meanwhile, I'm volunteering, I'm doing pro bono work, I'm serving on the boards every week, right? So there's a lot of folks that are doing that work that should be able to have a place, to live there. There are lots of people that work in our restaurants, our bartenders, all of those folks that, have multiple jobs and still can't afford that. And so I think the sort of getting to your question, B, of how did I get there? I think it was realizing that no, there wasn't enough being done, and that I think that I can, do more to help bridge those gaps, and fill those needs, for the people that are in the community and that deserve it and need it.
Yeah, random thought, just because you mentioned, about the community and that there's a lot of people that work in there. I actually worked in West Hollywood for 10 years. I gave West Hollywood all my 20s. And so just thinking about that, there was a time where like people who work there were able to put their children in that school district, and then something happened a couple of years later that just wasn't allowed, and it affected everyone that worked there, because it was just, it not only is it like it's a school district that some people want to put their kids in, but also like it's the accessibility where you go to work, and then right, you're nearby your child that you can go in case of an emergency, or in case you need to pick them up. And so with all these things that we're I'm just happy that there's somebody that wants to advocate for situations like that, thinking about the community, not only thinking about the people that live there, but the people that work there that really keep that that city moving.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's one thing to right to say our businesses are like the lifeblood of that city, and I think that that's true. But it takes employees to run the businesses to keep the city going, and
For
so
sure.
we have to look at it from all of those angles, right? If we the I think the employees, the people that work in that city, love it. Hang out there when they're not at work, like you said, put their kids in some of the schools there, and should be able to, for the investment of their time and their money in that city, right? It should have that level of accessibility. And I know that. So we don't quite have a school district yet, although I've heard lots of community members say, yeah, they want West Hollywood to have their own school districts, but they do have a lot of like the schools that you're talking about that are sort of like the private public partnership, where kids are really getting really good educations, and so that should be, I think, accessible, to everyone that wants to have a place there. So
Yeah, definitely. And so now we got into the point, as we have a lot of cannabis we have a cannabis community, and so we're
Before we do that,
Yeah,
before we
yeah.
get into that, let's
uh,
let's pay some bills real quick.
that's
Let's get in
right.
this commercial, and then we'll get into that cannabis news there. Give me a sec. Did you get to your destination and forgot to hit your local dispensary? Well, we got your back with Grass Door Delivery. Grass Door is one of the largest cannabis delivery services here in California, and they can have your cannabis experience delivered right to your door within 45 minutes. So go ahead and visit grassdoor.com and use our personal promo code SEDConnects at checkout, and you'll receive 20% off your first 3 deliveries. Again, that's SEDConnects, CED Connects at checkout, and we'll go ahead and take 20% off your first 3 deliveries. Now go ahead, relax, and enjoy the rest of this episode while your order is on the way.
What up? What up? We're back.
We're
Danny. Danny had to step out for a little bit, real quick. As everybody knows, Danny is a very, very busy guy, in the cannabis industry. And so, back to what we were talking about, picking up right where we left off, it's like, um, cannabis, and the politics, good or bad in West Hollywood, touch a little bit about that and what's going on.
So I think over the last couple of years, we've had, a council that's been pretty supportive of cannabis in the city. I'm certainly, very pro cannabis, and so I keep saying I want to be the cannabis candidate. And so it's been my, goal to make sure we're reaching out to our cannabis businesses, those that are already up and operating, those that are on their way, those that are, trying to figure out what the new landscape looks like after the pandemic, to make sure that we get our businesses up and running. We've approved all the licenses, but not all the licensees are operating, and so for me, it's about let's get people in business, let's get people making money, and let's give consumers what they want. I want West Hollywood to be, its own sort of destination for cannabis. I always think of, people go, to the vineyards for wine tasting and go to Sonoma, and I want West Hollywood to be affiliated with cannabis in that way, to where we're really opening it up, so people can get what they need, from lounges to, deliveries, the dispensaries that we have. I want folks to be able to come there and like get what they need and be able to enjoy it, and participate in our city, our town, our socially and whatnot.
Yeah, and so with that, I'm thinking about the community that sometimes uses, I mean, has cannabis as a medicinal purposes, because there's a lot of it, and we advocate for a lot for everything cannabis. But there's a community, and so for those who don't know about West Hollywood, and we talked a little bit about it. Prices in West Hollywood are a huge thing, and accessibility is a huge thing. And so there's people that who definitely need this medicinally. And so is there a chance, that the politics might have to get involved there, to lower some prices or to make it accessible to everybody?
Yeah, so we do have, a few of the medicinal locations, retail locations. We have the OG location that was there long before, long before the recreational got popping, and they're still going. So shout out to them. I think, what the city has done so far with affordability is there the three levels of taxes, right? There's like the state excise, there's like the county, and then there's like the city level. I think the city is at like 7.5, and those that are on, that have the medicinal cards that are able, that need it for whatever health condition, don't have to pay that 7.5, and so the other taxes are really not under the city's control. But I think that, as far as accessibility, like we have to be thinking about that in all aspects, and I totally agree that it would be great to be able to see prices in a range that folks that are taking it medicinally and even to some extent recreationally,
Yeah.
feel like they can, that West Hollywood, it makes sense to buy from there, right? Because in some aspects you can just go right over to Melrose, outside of the West Hollywood
Shout out to our
boundaries,
girl out there.
and get it for cheaper, right? And I think that if we're going to be like that destination, I think we have to make sure we are being competitive with locations that aren't within our city boundaries.
Yeah. My bad.
It's all good. Has any of the shop owners gone to City Hall to advocate and fight for lowering taxes?
So not to my knowledge. I think, they maybe folks feel, and I can speak certainly to other businesses that have said that, with different taxes and different sort of new regulations coming out from the city, that they don't feel that they've been as responsive to them as they would have liked. And so while I can't think of a specific example of that relating
Sure.
to cannabis, I imagine it's probably the same where, the city says it and it just sort of becomes what it is. But for me, being a candidate and wanting to be on city council, I want that narrative to change. I want it to shift to where, businesses come and they're like, we really need this lowered. We really need help so we can get started. We really need help to make sure we're going to be sustainable for years to come. I think that's a conversation we have to have and we have to take seriously, because if, we chose the businesses that we did based on all these rubrics, and so we want those businesses to be able to operate. And I think we have to have those conversations of what do they need and how the city can play a part in it. And taxes is certainly one of them.
And I think because you've been doing this work with labor through law, I think that fits your role perfectly with being in city council and making those business owners feel heard, because this is your day to day outside of being a city council, right? This is your day to day when of working with these business owners or working with these employees every day, and and your clients, I'm assuming, I would like to believe that they feel heard working with you. They would, if not, they wouldn't be coming back to you, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I think having someone like you with that experience and with that knowledge and that care for labor and businesses within the community, I think fits the need of that city council position.
I appreciate that. Yeah. And that's certainly the narrative that I have for this campaign, right? It's to me, it's not a us versus them. It's like it's a we. It's how do we make sure we're accomplishing the goals, right? And so it's not looking at, well, how do we make sure this side always wins and this side always loses? It's what's the balance between that? And so, like you're saying, in my day to day, right, I represent plaintiffs and the employees that have been aggrieved in some way by their employer. But for us to settle a case, we all have to come together and it has to be a conversation and we have to agree on terms that everyone can live with. And so I take that same mentality to, well, where do we end up and how do we get there with all sides, from employers, right, from businesses to the employees to the consumers? How do we end up in a place to where it's balanced, where everyone's getting what they need, and it helps us to thrive? At the end of the day, it's about how do we keep the city thriving and moving forward. And we can't forget any side in that equation, because we end up with, the polarization where people feel like they're, I have to go against this person in order to win. And it's like, nah, at the end of the day, we don't have to. We have to find that balance. And so with cannabis, with sort of all of the policies that I'm thinking of, it's always taking that into perspective in order to move us all forward.
Yeah.
Before, because I have other questions about the city council thing, um, but I know right before, and maybe you touched on it in a few minutes
Go for it.
with cannabis, but I know one of the things that we were talking about off air was
Mhm.
some of the things um, that you would like to either see or implement or at least bring up, or and related that with what relates to cannabis is social equity. Was that covered already?
No,
No,
no.
okay. So what talk to us about that? Share with us what are your thoughts amongst social equity in the city of West Hollywood with cannabis and its business owners.
Absolutely. I wish, from the beginning that there would have been just a more robust plan, for the social equity individuals. Um, when LA City was working on, their social equity program and hired Cat and all of that, like I had been really like sort of in the trenches with some of the social equity applicants that were trying to get in. And I think what happened in LA City was that a lot of the businesses had already been licensed, people were up and running, and then they sort of started revisiting the conversation of how to get social equity in. And so I think, the folks that I was working with had already had that door sort of closed on them. In West Hollywood, I don't know that there was really a plan for social equity, at least not in ownership. And to me, that's where it's important. The owners are the ones that are, able to, be financially stable because of their business. And so I think the in West Hollywood, it was a lot of focus on the employees and the folks that would, work at those places when they thought of social equity. And I think that that's sort of, not the way that had I, sort of been there, that conversation, should have gone. And so right now, moving forward, since, licenses are out, sort of all that stuff's done, it's looking at, well, what's the next phase of cannabis in West Hollywood?
Yeah.
And one of the conversations has been around having special event permits. And to me, that looks like pop-ups, that looks like, different experiential like events, right? So if
Sure.
there's like a pop-up for like having like a dinner, things like that. And it's then to me, that conversation has to be, we have to center that around like social equity. And so while there aren't, to my knowledge, social equity, there might be one in the city, but I think that means we need to bring in, maybe those folks that were in LA City that didn't, weren't able to get a license through the social equity program. It's looking at what businesses we can get into the city through these special events permits that really refocus, on those individuals that have been shut out, that were really, sort of persecuted in the, before cannabis was legal, and now are trying to do it, the quote unquote right way, but haven't had the opportunities to do
See what you
so.
did there, the
Yeah.
right way.
Gotta throw it in. Gotta throw it in.
Do cannabis
Zekiah
right.
Right.
And right is here.
Hey, I'm happy y'all start writing my slogan.
Right?
I love it. Yeah.
Right.
So do you know how many because you mentioned that all the licenses have been given out. Do you know how many licenses have been given out in the city and what type of licenses were given out?
Yeah, so it was 40 licenses under the original, and I think a lot of, so for the applicants, they were able to get multiple licenses. So I think we have 20 licensees, 40 licenses divided upon them. And so there was adult use retail, there was lounges, edibles only, loungeables, vaping, smoking. There was, so the consumption lounges, there's delivery and then medical. And so in each of those 5 categories, they had 8 licenses. And so folks were, again, they were able to get multiple ones in those categories. So we ended up with about 20 businesses licensed in our city.
Oh, but there hasn't been any new licenses since that last round, which was back in what, 2018, 2019, and when they were given out. From the time that they were given, which I want to say, what, 2018, 2019.
That sounds right.
How many of those licenses are operational now?
So let me see if I can do a quick count. I know not all of those are operational now. I know there are some that are still in like the design phase. Some I'm not even sure like what they're doing, if they're coming online.
What's their holdup?
Yeah, what the holdup
is. Does the city council have a say in like, yo, you guys need to start wrapping it up? Like you either start in this time window, and if not, we're gonna take it back and give it to someone else that's ready.
Yeah, so there was sort of the original timeline pre-pandemic where everyone needed to be up and operating. That got extended, and I want to say probably coming up soon where they need to be up and going, or like they have to come back to city council and say why they haven't been up and going, and potentially have to transfer. Hopefully, that doesn't happen, so those folks can really, some of them have had locations they've been paying for and not been able to operate, which that seems sort of insane, because I know the price for renting a storefront in West Hollywood is not cheap. And so I think that timeline's coming up, and I hope that if those folks that already have the licenses aren't able to get up and running, that there is a serious conversation about what do they need, and if the city can play a part in that. To me, it's always about, I think it's important to have rules that govern and that, people sort of know that they can turn to, that this is the way to do it. But I think it's also important to take it on a case by case basis, right? If there are these extenuating circumstances with labor, which is, sort of industry wide right now, if there's a situation with getting like construction, all of that stuff that's taken into consideration, so we can really get those folks that have made that investment already, so we can get them up and running, or at the very least, right, let them look at maybe some of the social equity applicants in other places that weren't able to get the storefront and do a partnership. I think that's would have been ideal for how everything started, that there were those partnerships, so that way multiple businesses could really be able to get the benefit of being in West Hollywood, which is a very popular location because it's a great city. But I think since it wasn't done from the beginning, we have to look at how do we do it going forward, and what makes sense for getting businesses up and going, and getting more businesses in the city that want to be there and that have a place there.
Have you looked into other cities and how they are governing or navigating the cannabis business within their cities? And is there any, and if so, is there any cities that stand out to you that you think like, oh, this would maybe be something that would work for West Hollywood?
Yeah, so I think by and large, I think the city is doing a good job with businesses, with our cannabis businesses. For example, there's Emerald Village, which was sort of this collective that was started to help like the OGs really be able to handle marketing. And so Emerald Village is a collective of, I think, maybe about 8 to 10 of the cannabis businesses that are there and that are trying to get online to help them with marketing around the city. And so I think that has been effective. I think that, other cities where it's not working well, the city is trying to do like, consider those for lessons learned, and also working on educating the community to know that, maybe this happened in this city and, it was a, it was issue, some sort of whatever the issue was, that's not the same in this city. Right. And so it's a lot of like educating those folks that aren't, the cannabis, like pro cannabis, to let them know that like our city's going to, we don't have to worry about safety and all of that stuff that people try to, negatively think about cannabis, that we are being responsible about it. But I guess my, one, sort of suggestion is that we make sure that it's open and inclusive to more folks that want to be in that business and want to do it in the city.
Is there any talk, within the city about, advocating, or you personally, about, decriminalizing this whole thing, or clearing records? And so, because I know that, to those who don't live in Cali, West Hollywood stands, as a, it's just accessibility, and I keep bringing that up, but it's also important. We have such a queer community in that space, and so within that, like, is there a voice for decriminalizing? Is there, for advocating for like clearing up records or anything like that?
Yeah. So as far as the decriminalization aspect, the city council has been pro doing that. The issue is that we don't have our own police department. We have the sheriff's department. And so right now, we can say, hey, we're not, arresting people. We're not pulling people over for sort of the low level cannabis possession issues. But there's only sort of so much that the city council has over the sheriff's office, because it's under, they have their own, they have Villanueva, but they have their own sheriff that makes that policy. And so I think there's been sort of the move towards that as far as like clearing records and things like that. I think the state has been, I know Gavin Newsom has been trying to get some things signed in order to clear people's records like automatically, so they don't have to go through the whole process of getting a lawyer and the expense that comes with that.
Yeah.
I think what West Hollywood could do that would be different than all of those things that are sort of happening around it is when it comes down to ownership of businesses or folks that want to do business in the city with cannabis is, to the extent that they can, being more lenient on what criminal background that the person has to allow them in the industry. And so it is codified that, if you've had possession or some sort of charge because of a cannabis related expense, that's, sort of off the table and they won't consider that. But but it's not true for every sort of offense that a person has done. Right. So there's still like that, that prohibition that if you have any other criminal history related to anything else, then you can't be a business owner in the city. And I think that feels sort of unnecessary, right? Because we know that the community that would benefit best from the social equity programs and things like that are folks that have been, charged aggressively or charged overly or, wrongly charged, the Black and brown community. And so to say, well, as long as it wasn't cannabis, to say that if it's cannabis related, it's cool. But if it's not, then you still can't operate. I think that's still a prohibition, especially when we've seen, folks, that have been cleared of charges years and years later.
Yeah.
Folks that have been overcharged for things that, their white counterparts wouldn't have been, charged with. And so I think we have to be more cognizant to the injustices in the system when we're thinking about how we're going to permit or prohibit people from being able to participate in the economics of cannabis.
Yeah.
As you were talking, I was thinking of different slogans. Get your weed the right way.
Hey.
It's something we've seen in.
Not mad at that.
Look at that. We're gonna have a whole segment about Danny.
Yeah,
coming
we're
up
just
with
gonna-
slogans.
Yeah, slogans.
I was thinking about, we know of other cities that definitely make their shops definitely carry social equity brands. That'd be really dope to see, like in West Hollywood or those areas where they have to have a social equity section, and to be able to bring some of our POC community, have a space like that.
Yeah, that would be dope. I remember listening to one of your earlier episodes with La Familia,
Hey, La Familia, what's up, guys?
the first Mexican brand in California, maybe even in the country. I can't recall which one, but anyways, an amazing distinction. And I went on Weed Maps to see if I could find them at any of the West Hollywood dispensaries, and I couldn't. And
y'all need to get up in there, guys. I don't know which one. Maybe you just need to reorder.
Yeah, hopefully.
Listen.
That would be amazing to see brands, like if there are like social equity like sections, or just there's really a commitment to bringing those brands into our retail locations would be dope. Or even if some of the consumption lounges that are on, if they have a different night where they have like that brand come in and showcase. They go in the lounge, they, have products people can purchase and smoke and talk about the brands. I think we have to be thinking of business in that way, thinking of inclusion in that way, right? It's not enough to say, well, I hired 50% folks of color, right? It's not just about that. It's about business ownership and there being space for businesses to really thrive in that way. I think that's how we move forward with making sure that our brands, that our folks really have, that access and that exposure. I know at least with wine, I really love wine and things like that. And so I looked up like all the, the black owned brands in California and then realized that like I can't go to Trader Joe's, or maybe 2 years ago, I couldn't go to Trader Joe's and get like a black brand, a black owned. And so, what Trader Joe's did is they created a partnership with the McBride sisters, who are, it's black owned wine business. And, now it's being pushed in so many places, but I was like, well, that's one brand, there are so many brands. And so
many.
that's how we create that space, right? That's how we, to me, quote unquote, make, equalize the playing field is by making sure that folks that own these businesses really get the sort of the exposure that they need in order to thrive.
Yeah, and for that community that's listening to us, and is located in WEedHO, uh, man, there's so many POC brands out there, and just what we just talked about, they're not accessible, so, or maybe the WeHo, shops don't carry them, but there is so much out there. We do touch on some of those brands like La Familia, and I mean, we've had a lot, and so definitely listen to the other episodes, but do your research, man. And we keep talking about this, do your research. There's people out there that have great quality out there.
Yeah, and brands that are on the, like items that might not be like on the market of like things that you love. Like I love Rice Krispies, and so
La Familia.
so them Rice Krispies were popping. It was definitely
we talked about that this weekend.
It was definitely stronger than I expected, but it was delicious. And I was like, yo, if they just did these Krispies without the cannabis, yo, I would be big as a house.
Turn
They were
these up.
so good. And then like their chocolates, right? So it's make hot chocolate with cannabis sounds amazing. And so it's things like that are so creative and that are, maybe unique or special in like some cultures that like we all can enjoy. It shouldn't have to just be you have to go to a certain part of town to get a product from like a certain, distributor or manufacturer. Like you should be able to get it, anywhere and everywhere, because it only, exposes us one to culture, but also just delicious products.
Yeah.
I love the yum yummies.
They're good. Going back to city council, how many seats are available in city council? Are you running against other members? What does that look like?
Yeah, so the city council, it's 5 total in November, which is the election, November 8th. Make sure you vote. It's 3 seats that are up for election. One of them is completely vacant, and so there's no one in that seat that's rerunning. One of them, the Lindsay Horvath, she's currently running for supervisor, and so her seat may be completely vacant if she wins in June, which I hope she does. And then the other one, the current mayor, is running again. And so those 3 seats are up. There are about, I think, 6 other people that are running for those 3 seats. And it's amazing. The city is 38 years old. It's never had a Black council member. It's never
Really?
had, yeah. It's
And of the 6 candidates that are running, are you the only Black member?
It's me and one other woman that's Black. Everyone else is white. And so it's been predominantly male. It's been predominantly, straight women that have been on the council. They've only had 2 lesbians in the 38-year history that have been on city council.
That's surprising.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And I'm like, it's representative of the people that live, work, and play there, right? Like there are lots of Black people, there are lots of Latinx people, there are lots of Asian people, that, right? The whole gamut of folks that live there and that work there and that like going out there that aren't being represented. Yeah. And I think that, we have to be cognizant of that, right? It's a progressive city, it's a creative city. And so I'm like, what have we been doing? You know, I think we've had some good people in, but I think we need to make sure that it's truly representative to move us forward in a way that we just haven't been able to because of those missing voices.
And before we move forward with this topic, one, I want to apologize at the beginning of the show. I said she when it correct. I want to be correct and say they them. So
Yeah, I appreciate that.
yeah.
Yes,
So
thank
I
you.
wanted to put that out there and apologize.
I appreciate that. And that is a great segue because they've also never had a non-binary person on the city council. And so to me, it's like it's just time. Like, let's get there, let's do it, let's move forward to people that love the city, that are really going to put forth, effort and dedication and passion, towards what needs to be done. From the smallest things of, do we need a new red light here, to do we upgrading infrastructure, to making sure we're not overdeveloping, to make sure our developers are keeping the uniqueness of the city, right? All of those things that are important. But also, the aspect of, representation being present as well. So lots of voices have an input on this policy as we move forward.
How has the city been receptive towards you since your announcement of running for city council?
I think it's been really good. I think the part of me that is from the South and understands how inherent bias and racism is, just in the culture, was very skeptical about what reception I would have from the city and announcing.
Right.
And it's been the opposite of that. It's
That's
been
good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, it's been just amazing. I mean, each event that I've had, it's brought out a new group of people, a new representation of the city. And people want to know, well, what are you going to do for me? Why should I vote for you?
Right.
And those are the types of questions that matter, right? At the end of the day, it's race and all of that stuff. I think it has its place and it has its importance, but folks want to know, what are you going to do for me?
And what are you going to do for them?
Oh, I'm gonna do it all. To me, it's about having, first of all, about having those conversations where people that are like, I don't like this, this, and this, that they have somewhere to go. Not everyone goes to city council meetings. Not everyone, knows who their city council members are, but they know that they don't like construction happening at midnight on their block, and they had no idea that it was happening. Right? People want to know that there is going to be some, if their landlords, put in place some policy or take away some services, they want to know that there's somewhere to go. And those are the types of things that I want to focus on. Looking at some of the municipal codes and things like that, it's like, well, when's the last time we looked at this? When's the last time we gave any thought to renters' rights? When's the last time we made sure that they really are able to get the things that they need if they have an issue with their landlord? And we have administrative processes for that, but we don't have, I don't think, policy that's congruent with some of the needs since maybe the last time that was updated. And so it's like I like to say it's the unsexy part, but it's also the stuff that people really care about. They want to make sure that, they know about construction that's happening on their streets. They want to make sure that if they need crossing lights put in, that someone's going to listen and get it done without them having to, to keep following up or just to give up on it because no one cares. And so that's what I want to do. I'm the person that's listening, that cares, and says, okay, cool, but how do we get it done? And also forecasting, like in 5 years, right? The decisions that we make today are going to affect, 5-10 years from now. And so are we making decisions that keep the city what it should be in 5 and 10 years? And so every decision that I make has to be focused on who are we becoming because of this decision. And so I think people can count on me to know that I really love the city and the history and where it can go, and that that I will govern in order to push us forward towards that that place that keeps us who we are, but modernizes us in the ways that we need to, that keep our businesses that we love and care about up and running, and that brings in new talent, new businesses, new startups, new entrepreneurships in that city that it really needs, to fill, the creative spaces that some of the developers are bringing into the town, to the city.
Is there a plan in place to like bring in younger um community members, stakeholders to city council every month? Because I've gone to like neighborhood council meetings in other cities, and I've gone to all these meetings in the past, and it's normally a very small group of folks that are there, and it's normally our senior citizens in the community from the community that attend these meetings. Is there anything that's being put into, and maybe it's like that already at West Hollywood City Council, where it's a party every meeting. I don't know, but is that it? What's the normal demographic of the folks that attend normal meetings, and if it isn't the younger crowd, is there something to get the younger crowd there?
Yeah, so I think that that's super important because in order for people to have like an influence on government and city council, like they have to be present to voice it. I think when there's like a big issue, on the agenda, like when we were discussing the living wage, then we had sort of more people there, right? More people that worked in the hotels that that were really invested in us increasing the living wage on like the day-to-day meetings. It's those people that are like sort of the staunch like folks that are involved in government that that come to talk about the street lamps not working or them needing more poop bags in some of the locations around their neighborhood.
Which is
And so
important,
it's important, right? And I
right?
think those voices are important, but to your point, there are people that I've met just going out to the bars and like kind of asking people what their thoughts were that didn't even know who the current mayor was, but they still care about the what the city is and what it's going to do for them. And so for me, I think it's being more creative and creating more opportunities and spaces for folks to voice it. Folks that'll never come to City Hall because it's on a Monday night, it's at 6 o'clock, and it usually goes until
Mm.
midnight. So
Damn.
yeah, it's they're long meetings. And so for me, it's about sort of what I'm doing now. It's being out in the community, it's being at the bars, it's being in the locations where people are and talking to them then. And so I imagine as a council member that that'll continue to where there is, I'm accessible in those places where people are, to hear what they're saying and be able to bring that back into the decision making and, encouraging them. Listen, you don't have to show up, write an email. You don't have to show up, call
Slide
and
into my DMs.
well, slide it to the DMs of the city clerk, but did the event, right? Or email me directly and we'll get it on record. It's showing people that there are different ways, that the council is accessible, but also making ourselves accessible in a way that hasn't been done so much in the past. And I think in order to hear all the voices in the community, we have to be in the community. And I'm running like that as a candidate, and that'll continue. Everyone that I meet, I give them a card, say, that's my cell phone number on there. Like, hit me up. Like, if you don't take me up on it, give me your number and I'll hit you up. It's about having all of those opinions because in aggregate, right, I can have a good idea that I think is the best. But I get 5, 10 people that care about that subject, that input, that give me their input. Then this idea becomes something that people are invested in and probably bigger and better than I would have thought of on my own. And so that to me is what sort of being a representative, a government, an elected is about. It's about building upon all of our ideas to find the thing that works, for multiple people, and that have people have a buy-in if they've had some input on it, right? Put your stank on it, and like now it's something that you feel pride in, and you get, and then now you're telling your neighbor that, oh, I talked to the council member, now they're doing this thing that I thought of. It's about that. It's about people feeling invested in the decisions that are making in their city.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. If there was any idea that I'd have, or something that I wouldn't want West Hollywood to forget, is that as working there for 10 years, I'd see a lot of people that would come in from other states and realize, they had one goal, and that was to get to West Hollywood because it is a beacon to a lot of those who don't live in California, or maybe some, more in the outskirts of California. It is a beacon to a whole community. And so with that, um, yeah, they're not prepared to they're not prepared to like the reality of what it costs to be in West Hollywood. And so a lot of that community ended up being, sleeping in their cars and still working in West Hollywood because that was the goal, And so if there's somebody that maybe has been forgotten, is that community that sleep in their car near West Hollywood and how much trouble they've had, but they work there, they eat there, they participate in things in there, in that city. And so hopefully we don't forget about them and realize what West Hollywood does mean to a lot of people.
Yeah, I think that's that reminded me of this conversation with I had with a friend of mine who works at one of the bars in West Hollywood and lives outside of the city and feels unsafe going out in her community as a trans as a trans person without being fully made up,
Yeah.
where she's easily identifiable to the outside world as a woman, and so she is trying so hard to move into the city, and the bar owners have been really helpful in trying to help her like to get there, right? Connecting her with different landlords that they know, different business owners that they know to get her into the city. And so I think, in my mind, I want to believe that a lot of businesses are like that. I don't know that they are, but I think that it's, that example is sort of indicative of like the community that exists there. And it shouldn't just be on, right, those sort of individuals to like make this thing happen. I think,
Mhm.
as business owners, they have that power and ability to do it. But also, right, if there's a greater role, and I think that there is, that like the council can make with these things, then I think that's something we have to do, because some people feel safer living in the city. Some people feel safer working in the city. And I think that those people certainly have a place and should be able to afford to live there.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to take different partnerships and different conversations with developers, with landlords. But I think that there is room for that to happen. But I think we have to be creative about approaching those conversations and realizing that it's doable. It's doable, and we need to really put our intentions towards it.
Yeah. Yeah, there is a huge transitional community there, and then because they don't realize what being in LA costs. And so all they know about LA is West Hollywood. A lot of community, at least the LGBT Q community, like all they see is the West Hollywood, and so that's really the only goal that they bring. And so sometimes it is just West Hollywood, it serves as a transitional space, and then they can settle into other areas once they've known LA a little bit more. But a lot of that transition is happening, like I said before, like home. They're unhoused, they're in their cars, and all that. And so if anything can happen, that'd be a great thing.
Yeah, I would love to work on policy that helps to make sure that those people have a better transition and not living in their cars. It's so distressing to walk and see the growing unhomed population in the city. And so for me, my top priority is working on the affordability of housing, because I think that that stretches not only to some of the folks that you're describing that live there, that work there, and that want to be there, but folks that just have nowhere else to go and are living on the streets. I think we have to do more in order to make sure that we're addressing the humanitarian crisis of people living on the streets. And it's not enough to say, well, it's happening everywhere. It's like, well, this is happening in our city, and we have a responsibility to address it. And sort of to your point about coming to West Hollywood and like that being the place to settle. I moved from Silver Spring, Maryland. I think I was paying like a little over $1,300 a month for a 1 bedroom, but I had like a pool, I had a gym, I had a concierge, I had
Look at
parking.
Danny's face,
Damn.
everybody.
And so when I moved here, I was like, all right, I'm gonna try to stay around 13, thinking I'm gonna get the same amenities.
Lord.
I found
Yeah.
a studio for like 17, 18, and I was like, so I have no amenities.
Mhm.
And I have, a studio apartment. It was
With
it's-
no
it's-
parking.
Everybody
with
out
no-
here,
I
With
didn't even
no
know I needed
parking.
to ask for parking.
to
I just
everybody,
assumed.
then that's what I was about to say. To everybody who does not live in LA, parking is a amenity.
It's an
Like
amenity.
it does not come with parking.
Yeah, and even air conditioning. I
Oh,
took
that's
air
Danny's big
conditioning
thing.
for granted. I didn't even think to ask when I looked at the apartment. I didn't even think to look. I
Well-
just saw the furnace on the wall, which I assumed I had never seen a furnace. I just assumed it was the air conditioning unit. Here comes summer, and I was like,
Yeah,
I was like, how do I
box.
turn the AC on?
Yeah, well, I mean, that also has to do with a whole other topic that we could spend hours on with like climate control and all that other shit.
Danny's the
But-
AC guy here.
But no, but you just got to think of like, obviously when the community was built at the time that it was built,
Yeah.
it wasn't as hot as it is now, right? So the need for AC units wasn't even a thought, like
Mhm.
in that part of the community versus like in the valley where it's always been hot for like millions of years, where when they built the house obviously they put the AC with it, you know what I mean? But like there's cities like where I grew up in, like Inglewood, where it's close to the beach, it's cooler, but summertime now it's fucking hot in there, and
It's
there were
hot.
times where it's like, "Ugh, dude, I wish I had an AC," but they didn't build one because of that.
Yeah,
So like I said, it's a whole different topic,
it's a whole different topic.
but still, ugh,
But yeah,
fucking.
to
But if
go
you move,
back, you came back from some, you were
and
coming
and
from
from
somewhere else.
Florida, every
yeah,
house has an AC
I
unit.
mean, it's
So
just
that's another thing for
it's just
you. It's a culture
expected.
shock.
Yeah.
Like every house needs to have an AC. What's this carpet on the floor? What the hell's going on? Right, I get that. I get that part too.
What a shock. So yeah, I couldn't even fathom an apartment not offering air conditioning until I moved here.
Yeah.
Or parking. Like, I mean, I used to park. I literally purchased a scooter because I used to have to park so far away from my apartment.
Like a Vespa? Like a Vespa
No, like the other little,
Like the city
electric
ones?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
the little city ones, like
Oh,
the
okay.
Yeah.
yeah, because we
I've
parked
always
so
wanted a
far.
Vespa.
Oh man, I
Want to start a little Vespa
That-
club,
that's
like a
what
little
that's
motor
what
club.
LA. That's what a lot
VP,
of
a Vespa
LA
club.
the people that live in LA. I think that's what they dream about. Little
Vespa
Vespas.
clubs. Brum, brum, brum.
But yeah,
I love that. Yeah. I was gonna say so, and also just sort of cannabis, since that's what we're
Mhm.
that's what we're here to chat about. Which looking at these, if you're not looking at the YouTube, there's just a couple
Babies.
pounds of in front of me, and I'm like, ooh. um, just thinking about like the future of cannabis in West Hollywood, and where it's going. I touched on it a bit, but I do want it to become like, if you want to do a pub crawl, but it's like a cannabis crawl, right? Things like that in our city that really sort of highlight and give people the experience of going to different places, and trying different brands, and just letting it be so just okay and acceptable that it's not, people aren't thinking of it in the stigma that's been associated with cannabis for so long, that it just is, it's just like going out for a drink, right? You're just going out, you're gonna, pop a fizz, or, roll, get a rollie or whatever. I want it to be that type of culture. So we remove the stigma from cannabis, and it just is a part of, our identity as a city. So
yeah,
Nice.
I love it.
B,
Yeah, what's up?
you know what's coming.
Oh yeah, be intentional.
The be intentional
Be
moment of the
intentional
day.
moment.
Love it. I gotta come up with like a little.
that was
No.
it,
something.
right? You just did it.
Yeah,
Be
that's true.
intentional moment. Yeah. This week it's been emotionally, for me at least, it's been an emotionally tough week. And I don't really want to get into it because I'm definitely still affected by what's happened in Texas. But that same day, like as I mentioned earlier, I had a little one that same day that was culminating for middle school, and so
Elementary.
elementary, so yeah,
Right.
elementary. And yesterday she was stretched out on my couch, just sleeping. I guess she was just tired, and so she was completely stretched out. And to realize how time has passed, um, she's not so tiny anymore.
Yeah.
And so I just want to remind everybody that um, never pass the opportunity to tell someone you love them. Be intentional about that time. Be intentional about your own time, about the time you have with someone. I often think as people in your life as relationships. And so once in a while, to those, all my people, I will send a message, and it doesn't necessarily mean like, hey, we need to see each other. It's just know that I'm thinking about you and I love you. And let don't let that opportunity pass. If you feel it, if you sometimes if somebody crosses your mind, like send them a message. It doesn't have to be a whole conversation. It's just a hi, just thinking about you. Just want to know, like, I hope that you're okay, and that I'm simply thinking about you, and that means a lot. And so be intentional about that, um about that time. Yeah.
Thank you, B.
Hey, that's great.
That was good.
Yeah.
And yeah, that 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 ordeal that happened, yeah, it's been rough for everyone.
Senseless, just senseless.
Hmm.
But all right, well, let's switch. Let's
Let's
transition
switch
gears
it
real
out.
quick.
But hold on, to
Z,
everybody, to all those
yes,
listeners, before we end up, like, we love you. We have a lot of love for you. Thank you for listening to us.
absolutely.
And
Thank you.
so you've build a community with us, and so we might not we said,
All
Danny,
two of y'all.
yeah, all two of us. So Danny always says it, like, definitely shout out to us. You can find us on Instagram, and so DM us, man. We're always happy to hear about the community that's out there with cannabis, and so thank you, and we love you.
For sure. Z, where can we find you? Where can people donate? Where can people find out about the next rally campaign? Share with us all that info.
Oh, sure. So my website, it's right, WRIGHT, the number 4, WeHO, WEHO.com. And so you can find the donation link. We got merch on there, which is been so amazing to like have merch where it's like we have 2 designs right now. It's
Do you have hats?
Oh, I don't have a hat yet, but that was
I
my
need a
first.
hat.
Yeah, I got you. We getting hats because I want a hat too. But so we have a W4W, which is right for WeHo, or Women for Women. You take it and do what you want, and then we have this amazing Shirley Chisholm quote that has been sort of the guiding force for me. And it's about, if you don't, if they don't have a seat at the table for you, bring a folding chair, right? Like, let's get in there and let's make sure we're heard. And so rightforweho.com is the website. On IG, right, and spelled out for FOR. Somebody took it. I'm real upset because they're not even using it. They just took it because people are
Dang.
people.
Oh, yeah.
So right for spelled out on Instagram, and Facebook, right for the number. So Instagram is the only one that I didn't get it in time. So everything else is right. The number 4 WeHo. So check me out. Message, all of those ways of contacting, and you can donate on that site, contribute. I always tell people, look at it as an investment in the type of leadership you want to see in the community. And so whatever that looks like, if you can give me $10 a month until November, that $10 is going to go far. We're going to make it go far. If you can give 1,000, max out, it's going to go far. And we're going to make sure that we are able to go all the way with canvassing, with mailers, all of that stuff. It's so expensive to run a campaign. And in the city, it's very expensive. It's like $100K. And so we're making our way there. But everything that everyone can give and do and invest, I appreciate it. If you got $5, let me get it, because I will make sure.
Let me help you. Let me
Ain't
help
nothing wrong with that. Yeah, if you got them $5, that you can put out there, definitely.
Do you have any
Put it in
events
there.
coming up that you or maybe planning to have at maybe one of these cannabis lounges that we were talking about earlier?
For sure. So June is Pride Month, and so we are going to be running around the
yeah.
town in Pride. So nothing in Pride, nothing in June, but July we're back at it. We are going to partner up with Cannabis Lounge in West Hollywood, have a meet and greet where you can smoke, do edibles, whatever. We can talk about the campaign. We can talk about what your needs are, do some educational aspects, but I want to meet people where they are. So if we're hanging out in cannabis lounges, and I'm in a cannabis lounge, and so that'll be coming up. If you check the IG, Facebook, it'll be on there for July. And then in July, we're also doing a kickball tournament. So orgs that want to get a team, if you and just your neighbors want to get a team, and then we're gonna have a family picnic after that, just in the park, hanging, vibing, talking about the campaign, and really just creating community, because that's what pushes us forward, is our community. So yeah, those 2 events will be coming up in July.
Get your wheat the right way.
The right way. We're gonna have hats, some hat merch there too for purchase for Danny and me, because I really want a hat too.
Hell yeah.
Woo.
All right. Well,
Exciting.
with that being said, thank you, Z, for coming through. We really appreciate your time and energy in the space. I loved having you here. I'm sure B does
for
too.
sure.
I'm so grateful. Thank you. And you all made it super easy to just come and
Right, it was
chill and
easy,
talk.
right?
It was so easy.
Chill.
I love it. I love
Yeah.
it. I'm coming
And
back.
Like I said,
I
what
even
camera,
caught
what
yourself
mic?
like you were in your zone. I wasn't gonna mess that up. So I'm glad you felt comfortable. And you look like a pro.
I appreciate it. And shout out to all the listeners. Keep coming back. I started at the beginning of CED Connect, and I'm like, yo, it's I mean, if you're in your car, if you're just walking around, like, it's a vibe. The music is a vibe. The other guests are so entertaining. And just educational and fun. So I'm a fan. I am definitely a fan.
Thank you.
I love podcasts.
Yeah,
Thank you.
definitely. That listening, also listening to those coming up episodes. We got one that's very interesting, at least to me. We asked for somebody to take the concert, like that has different opinions and positions in all this cannabis industry, and so we definitely we have that coming up. So
Oh, yeah, we
listen
do.
to that.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, we do.
All right, y'all. Well, we'll see you guys next time. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you guys on the next episode. All
Much
right,
love.
later.
That